This episode is brought to you by Generate Solutions, your go-to AI experts specializing in empowering commercial real estate companies and environmental consulting firms. As AI is quickly transforming industries and enhancing efficiency, it is important you don't let your business fall behind. At Generate Solutions, we streamline workflows and automate tasks by creating custom AI agents tailored specifically to your business needs. Interested in taking your operations to the next level with AI? Email mfiorante@generatesolutions.com or find us directly on LinkedIn by clicking the link in the bio. On to our episode.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. And today is going to be one that I'm really looking forward to in two senses of that. Bringing back a gentleman who's been on the show a couple of times in regards to books that he has written. A gentleman that has really left an impact on a lot of things that he's done here in the world. We're talking about the author Doug Feldmann. Doug, of course, is the author of 14 books. The main focus, of course, here is on baseball. His work has been recognized in multiple nominations for the Casey Award and the Seymour Medal from the Society for American Baseball Research. He is the professor in the College of Education at Northern Kentucky University, and at the official moment, he is an official scorer of Major League Baseball in Cincinnati. Of course, he was a scout for the Cincinnati Reds. When I say Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds, the Seattle Mariners, and the San Diego Padres. He has also completed a PhD in curriculum studies at Indiana University and his master's degree also. Doug tonight has come in to talk about something that we touched on a few times when he came in to talk about a book that he wrote called Miracle Collapse. Was the first time I talked with Doug. It was about the 1969 Chicago Cubs. And then, of course, we talked about the great defenseman here in Chicago, number 3, Keith Magnuson. That was another book that now I tied into a documentary that I did a couple weeks back. But tonight, Doug, well, before I bring you in, we're going to talk about this book, Gibsons Last Stand. And this is the rise and fall and near misses of the St. Louis Cardinals, 1969 to 1975. We're going to talk about this great right-hander and what I'll have to say about him at the end. And Doug, I truly appreciate you coming on. So after all that, what is going on with you, young man?
Well, John, thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. Just working through the summer. As a 55-year-old, I jumped into the game late. I have an 11-year-old who I'm chasing around this summer, but we're having fun and just looking forward to. I've always enjoyed the what I might call the rhythm of the sports seasons. You know how they kind of mesh together with baseball coming to a climax and football starting, and then you got your winter months. So always love the change of the seasons and looking forward to the next go around of sports, whatever it may be.
And I'm sure, yeah, I know with the 11-year-old, you guys are on the fly, on the go. You're for sure unbelievable. Yeah, I can imagine. You know, I'm going to throw a date at you, and in regards to the book that I want to talk tonight about, the Gibsons Last Stand. When I was going through it, a couple of chapters really, brought back. And I think, if I'm safe to say here, Doug, it's 8 solid chapters that you delge into, correct?
That's about right. I believe so. I think it was 8.
October 10th, 1968. Mm-hmm. It's Detroit versus St. Louis. And a guy by the name of Jim Northrup hits the ball to a center fielder named Curt Flood. Mm-hmm. It looks like Curt comes in on the ball, misjudges it. Now he tries to retrack, and his spikes kind of stick, and before you know it, the ball is off the wall, and that was definitely Game 7. But why I bring up that date, and we're going to go forward now with Mr. Gibson and a little bit more even of the Cardinals in here, I think it's almost kind of like wow, from that date on, things changed in St. Louis. Am I correct in starting it that way?
That's a great point, John. Yes, indeed. So many things change across the board with the Cardinals, with the game. But I mean, we'll stick with the Cardinals and Gibson himself. It's funny. Gibson, of course, had his greatest year and the great year of pitching in 1968, and they were greatly expected to beat the Tigers, and so many unexpected things happened in that series itself. Denny McLain was the great pitcher for the Tigers, but the real hero off the mound for Detroit was Mickey Lolich. Mickey Lolich ended up being a dominant pitcher in that series. So anyway, Cardinals like their chances going Game 7, but it doesn't go their way. So starting on that date, it really is a watershed moment, I think, in Cardinals history because so much happens in the offseason before 1969. The first pitch is even thrown in the 1969 season. Bob Gibson goes on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in February of '69 and suggests that a player strike might be imminent by the players' union. That's a young players' union, so to speak, one that's just getting its traction in terms of bargaining power. So that catches kind of the nation off guard in hearing that, and that might have been the first salvo in causing Gussie Busch, the Cardinals owner, to come into the locker room at spring training in March in St. Petersburg for the Cardinals and basically tear the team up and down. And this, of course, is in the same chronological umbrella as Curt Flood, beginning his journey, so to speak. And but Gussie Busch is very disappointed in not just the Cardinals, but just the average modern player, as he might call it, and what he thinks of his greediness. And it really begins to tear apart the seams of the team. I entitled the first chapter "Like Family" because they really were a true close-knit club. Gibson wasn't especially close with any of his teammates, like he was any of his opponents. But the team fought together. They had a tight bond. Were together. Most of the starters were together a long time in the '60s, and that starts to come apart. So, I mean, what I'm getting at is, change is starting to abound in the game, and it's bemoaned. It's bemoaned not only by Gussie Busch and what he perceives as the greedy modern player, but it's bemoaned by Gibson himself as well, and that's kind of a point throughout the book. The game is changing. The mound is lowered. People blame it on him. Well, I mean, a lot of pitchers had great seasons in '68, not just Gibson's phenomenal season.
Yeah, I mean, that mound was higher, and sure.
Yeah, it was lowered by a third going into the '69 season. Went from 15 inches at its crest down to 10. Expansion comes in '69 with the Expos and the Padres. Expansion to the National League, and So change, just like it is in society, of course, at this time, late 60s, 70s, change is all around. And it's interesting, John, because also it's from a couple of years later, but in the early 70s, Jack Buck, the great Cardinals radio announcer, he shares a very telling story. It's sometime in the early 70s, he was walking through the airport with the team, and the Cardinals were walking in front of him. Several of the players were walking in front of him. And they had on tie-dye shirts and jeans with holes in the rear end, and they were carrying the what was the advent of, I guess, when I was a kid in the '80s, we had our boom boxes that we carried on our shoulder.
Sure.
They were carrying radios on their shoulder and sunglasses on, and Jack Buck said he just said to himself, "This is the St. Louis Cardinals." He wasn't judging them so much, but it just was unrecognizable to him.
Right, a red Shane D's team traveling this way. Yeah, I can imagine.
Right, and my father's from. My father played with and against the Shane Dean brothers in Southern Illinois. He's from the same part of the country, and I can only imagine, how shocking it was to Red to see this counterculture
Oh, for sure.
emerge.
Oh my God, for
But
sure.
in the same sense, players were just like any other young people at the time, testing the waters of their freedoms, and so it became an interesting implosion in that day and age. So it's change that's not so warmly embraced, not just by the owners, but by some of the players like Gibson as well.
Sure. I'm just going to step away just to get something, but I'm going to come right back.
Certainly.
And these are some of the things that start to play with the organization, and probably the disgruntled owner now starts to get a little bit disgruntled. Not to harp on that 68 thing, we talk about Mr. Bush being the owner. Do you think from the ball that went over Flood's head was the start and the end for Kurt Flood? Was that even though Flood played in that 69 season? Mm-hmm. You think, I always looked at it, Doug, I have to tell you, when I go back to look at this, if Kurt Flood doesn't get traded, do we really have arbitration?
Oh, I think so. Eventually, I think the pressures of the players' union would have come eventually anyway. But regarding Flood and his being soured in St. Louis, someone, Bob Gibson, said this one time. He said shortly, maybe a month after the World Series, a woman came up to him in a restaurant, and that's always a bad move, going up to Bob Gibson in a restaurant.
Oh God!
He valued his privacy, and he turned people away for autographs, like he's trying to have dinner with his family, and he tried to explain that, but he just valued his privacy. But anyway, this woman came up to him in a restaurant and asked, "Are you still speaking with Kurt Flood?"
Yes, I saw that in the book. Yes.
Yeah, and all Gibson could say in response was, are you kidding me? Of course I am.
You're right.
Tried to make it out to a personal thing. Strangely enough, Kurt Flood and Gussie Busch were very close in the preceding years.
Okay.
Flood was a gifted artist. He spent a lot of his time painting, and he did portraits of the Busch family. Bush really thought of him like a son. And I think that's why it was especially difficult on Mr. Bush when Flood did what he did, refused to report to Philadelphia, and
right.
And that set in motion, of course, a string of events that changed everything.
Yeah, like you said, now we go to this change because I don't think he wanted to go there because, of course, the Phillies were really now on the dive. Basically, maybe even could be considered worse than the Montreal expansion of the day and everything else. And, of course, I think that trade comes with Mr. Richie Allen coming to St. Louis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one thing, Flood suggested that Philadelphia had a reputation for extreme racism, but I think Bill White succeeded there quite a bit. Certainly Dick Allen, a very colorful player, but he had his problems in Philadelphia. So, but for whatever reasons, Flood had his reasons, and
Sure.
But that of course changed everything going forward.
I'm reading the book. I noticed, of course, I think when we get to one of the years, there was only Brock and Gibson left. I don't remember, was it 1970 or 1971 by the time? The team now has been decimated, right? I mean, a lot of the original players are gone from, let's say, that, safe to say, from the 64 run, when the last year they won that World Series.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yes, and then, it's even before, this is still in the reserve clause era, of course. So, but even in the reserve clause, guys get old and guys get traded, and
Sure.
they were reinventing themselves. You spoke of the '68, October 10th, 1968, things changing. Ted Simmons gets drafted out of high school in '67,
Sure.
I believe it is. Jerry Royce is a St. Louis kid, gets drafted out of Rittner High School in St. Louis, '68. So, the pieces are there for them to build a new team or start to build a new team. And I think what's interesting to me, John, also is you talk about Dick Allen coming in '70. Um, Matty Alou comes in 71.
Right, from the Pirates.
Veda Pinson comes in 69. Before all that, they try these one-piece fits. When Roger Maris retires, that's when Veda Pinson comes in.
When Veda comes, right.
Kind of putting these pieces in, thinking that that's as close. They could be really close again, but chemistry is a powerful thing, and it's hard to maintain that good chemistry
Yes.
over a long period of time, for sure.
I have to ask you, as I delved into the book a lot here, the start of '69 with Gibson, let's going back to Bob, our main thing here today, was Gibson now really starting to, because I mean, '68, like you said, he dominated. I could still see that World Series game when he's striking out Tim Horton, Norm Cash, and the whole gang there. But by '69, has he lost something? Personally, in the arm? Was the arm damaged?
I don't think so. That's a heck of a season to even come close to repeating.
Oh yeah.
Although he's had certainly great years like that. His '67 season was interrupted with a Roberto Clemente line drive that broke his leg in July. He wouldn't maybe gone on to '68 numbers, but by '69. There could be some fatigue involved. I mean, there's an amazing statistic out there. I should be able to quote it, but from a 2-year stretch between, I think it's 68 and 7, or maybe middle of '67 when he comes back from his injury to the middle of '69, I believe it's correct that Gibson was removed from a game in the middle of an inning just once.
Wow.
He otherwise had a complete game, or he was removed for a pinch hitter because the Cardinals were behind. But one time in 2 years did Red Shandies go to the mound and remove him in the middle of an inning. So I mean, go ahead and try to take the ball from him. Tim McCarver,
Yeah.
Tim McCarver had all those stories of trying to go out to the mound and talk to him, and Gibson was turning his back on him. So
yeah, and I remember McCarver saying to him, he would put down signs, and he goes, "You can put down all the signs you want. I'm throwing what I want." He was there.
Roger,
yeah.
leaping ahead a decade or two, Roger McDowell told me that when Davey Johnson would come to the mound, he'd make him take the ball out of his glove. He wouldn't hand him the ball. He said every time he'd make him go into his glove and grab the ball. So, I mean, a man like Gibson, there are some pitchers people in the pitching world who believe they just have so many throws in the arm. And it could well be that Gibson was getting fatigued. I mean, he had been in the majors for nearly 10 years at that point by '69. So,
when we talk about the near misses, and I love the way you've titled this, "The Rise, the Fall, and the Near Misses." From '69, let's say, to '73, because I think '75 is his last year, 1975. But from '69 to '73, was he still winning 20 games? I think he was in the 20 gamers, right?
He was. He threw his only no-hitter in '71, and
Yes.
in Pittsburgh, and Gibson always said that he didn't believe he'd ever throw a no-hitter because he made too many mistakes during a game,
Right.
like in challenging hitters. He just wasn't. He didn't think he was your typical no-hitter pitcher because of the way he went after hitters.
Sure.
Guys going for a no-hitter, and understandably so, they'll nibble a little bit. They'll go for the corners more as opposed to grabbing more of the plate when they're trying to keep a hit off the board.
Exactly.
But no, he. One thing he did say, and jumping ahead to '74, basically the last season I discussed in the book. In 1974, the Cardinals came very close, and they were the last day of the season. They were still alive, but for your listeners in Chicago, remember a guy by the name of Steve Swisher comes into play.
Catcher.
Cubs catcher Steve Swisher. Well, Cubs are playing in Pittsburgh, and if the Cubs can manage to beat Pittsburgh while the Cardinals are waiting out a rain delay in Montreal, the Cardinals have a chance to still tie Pittsburgh. But Steve Swisher, unfortunately, lets a pass ball get by him, ties the game, and then the Pirates win the game and thus clinch the division. But my point is that Gibson said if I had been 38, or if I had been 28 years old that season instead of 38, we would have blown away the division in '74. He, 38 years old, is pitching as many innings as he did over, almost 15 years, 16 seasons. He could no longer be the true stopper, I guess you'd say, on the starting staff. And we can go back into this a little bit as well. To the trading of Steve Carlton, trading of Jerry Royce. Cardinal fans bemoan that all the time. What could have been had we had Gibson, Carlton, Jerry Royce as a first three.
Exactly, and I got to tell you, this is unbelievable, Doug, in the sense of this. And again, going back to '74, they were, you guys, to St. Louis, a game and a half out.
Yeah.
I know the record, the wins in those eras were in the 80s. I think they were 88 and the Cardinals were 86, the Pirates. But I have to tell you, there's a line in the book when Carlton got traded to the Phillies for Rick Wise. And I think it's someone saying, and I can't remember who said it, well, we just gave 200, not only did we lose Carlton, but we just gave 232 wins to the Phillies.
Oh, yeah. and
I loved it.
And Carlton wasn't necessarily dominant until he got to the Phillies. He had a great year in '72 when he won 26 or 27, and the Phillies won 70 something. But hard to ignore his ceiling, though. I mean, see a guy, a left-hander, 6'5", throws the way he did. He was just coming into his own, but it really hadn't had a dominant season for the Cardinals. Maybe pitching in Gibson's shadow a bit, but
yeah. He was, for me, growing up, Carlton, and maybe was kind of like our Ken Holtzman until Holtzman went to the A's. Mm-hmm. And then he became like a Carlton for the A's, going to 3 World Championships. But Carlton got in a dispute with the Cardinals over money, correct?
Correct, and Jerry Royce as well. Jerry Royce actually corrected me on a mistake I made in the book. He and I got to be some distant friends over the subsequent years, but the popular press, the popular media had made it out to be that it was his mustache that he had grown that had gotten the ire of Gussie Busch. It was really just a money disagreement. It had nothing to do with the mustache, he said. But you talk about Royce, a hometown kid,
right?
Won 2 state championships in Missouri from his St. Louis high school. For them not to hold on to Royce, I think was disappointing to both sides, both to Jerry and to the Cardinals and to Cardinals fans. But of course, Jerry went on to a fantastic long career with several teams. So,
oh yeah, definitely, yes, for sure.
And this is, it's funny, John. This is really in working with the Reds. I've heard people talk about Bob Hausum over the years, and Bob Hausum was really the one leading the charge against losing the reserve clause. He thought it's almost prophetic if you look at it this way. It's almost prophetic on his part. He says, "Well, if you want to pay $10 for a beer at the ballpark one day, go ahead and have free agency." And it was a tough call because the American society, we pride ourselves on you going out and getting what you think you're worth, and
sure.
Baseball wasn't doing that. But at the same time, we always knew Stan Musial as a Cardinal. We always knew Duke Snider as a Dodger, and fortunately, we had exceptions in our day. With we always had Tony Gwynn as a Padre and that sort of thing. But that sort of loyalty, in a way, has gone by the wayside.
Sure. Oh, without a doubt. From, let's say, that 69 to 75. After, of course, you go from 64 winning the World Series, and I'll correct myself. Yes, they did win in 67 against the Boston Red Sox. Another great series, too, that won 7 games. But you think Gibson is just not into the new era when we talk about the book, The Last Stand? He's not into this new era, correct?
Right, exactly. And what I would mean by that is, Gibson always relished the one-on-one melee battle, hand-to-hand combat, whatever you want to call it, between the pitcher and the hitter. And he felt that was being legislated away, so to speak, with the lowering of the mound, with what he perceived to be, and he's probably right, the shrinking of the strike zone starting in
Sure.
'69 and into the '70s. He thought, he thought that MLB was seeking a softer game, so to speak, one that was with umpire warnings when a pitcher threw too close, and he acknowledged that MLB probably had its reasons for doing those sorts of things, but that was what he really valued. People think of him as having this hatred for opponents and for batters. Now, I don't know if I call it a hatred, but for instance, he very much disliked going to all-star games. He disliked playing in all-star games because he felt for 2 or 3 days he had to buddy up with these guys.
That he's thrown heat against, right?
Next week he's going to have to go back to battle against these guys, and he didn't even want a hiatus in in that battle. I mean,
right.
he didn't want to pretend for a day or two that he was chummy with Roberto Clemente or anybody else. So he had to Dick Allen, anybody else he had to throw at or against in the coming days.
Oh, without a doubt, I can. Him and another guy who pitched for the Dodgers, who I never saw, but saw enough YouTubes on him. Him and a guy by the name of Don Drysdale made a living of what you just said of intimidating a batter. Don't crowd my plate because I'll come in on you or whatever.
Well, sure, and I think of the guys. And baseball is a lot of fun today. The changes the game has made. I love how fun the game is to watch. But could you imagine players who hit a home run today doing their sort of celebrations with a Bob Gibson on the mound?
Oh, jeez. Yeah. There's no even this pointing to the dugout now. I notice a lot of the Cubs now they'll point to the dugout and do this,
stopping and shooting a 3-pointer in between second and third, and
it just.
I don't think that goes well. In fact, you may have heard this before. Hank Aaron had a great paragraph-long piece of advice. If you hit a home run off Bob Gibson, he said, if you're lucky enough to hit a home run off Bob Gibson, keep your head down as you're running around the bases. Don't look at him. Don't run around the bases too fast. Don't run around the bases too slowly. He might think you're showing him up. Otherwise, go straight back to the bench. Sit on the bench, fold your hands nicely. Just don't look out.
Exactly. Oh God, he had that look about him, like you said. He didn't want to be your friend. He was all business.
And you're probably, if you homer off Gibson, even if you do all those things, you're probably going to get thrown at the next time up anyway. So.
This book, again, the Gibsons Last Stand that I'm holding up here, this great book that you wrote. This comes out. Did this come out in? I forget the date now. Was it 2016?
2011, I believe it was.
2011. Okay, so a little further back. Were you in contact at all with Mr. Gibson about the book?
Yes. It's funny because in getting a hold of the Cardinals with whom I wanted to speak, Lou Brock was one, of course. Gibson was one, of course. The Cardinals PR department or their alumni relations department, whatever you call it, were saying, well, like with Lou on the bases, he's hard to catch, and same thing with Gibson. Very private people, and I got a little bit out of him, but it got to a point where I didn't want to push him, John. So
sure.
I relied mostly on secondary sources, but it's interesting you bring that up because in the books I've written, I've gotten more colorful and a larger amount of data, I would say, from kind of the also-rans, kind of the second stringers, the guys not known so much, because they enjoy being asked for their perspectives on, Bob Gibson's been asked for his perspective, or was asked for his perspective on 1968 1,000,001 times, but, when you go to a Phil Gagliano or a Dal Maxville, guys who aren't as remembered, they tend to be richer in their comments anyway, but very little, but and I didn't want to push him, but
was it and Doug, not to bring it up, was it like through phone calls, or were you able to ever meet him and say, hey, can we have a cup of coffee?
No, we never met. Telephone a couple times briefly, and that was it. Another thing I'll say, frankly, when you're dealing with a topic in the 1960s, 1970s, guys' memories of what happened maybe aren't as sharp. Not for any
Sure.
decline in health necessarily, could be, but just so long ago that it's hard to remember things accurately. So I tend to rely on secondary sources anyway.
Right. Yes.
But certainly it adds some color if you can get a hold of people.
Oh, the main, yeah, that main person, right? Exactly.
Like I said, Jerry Royce set me straight. I had something wrong in the book, and
Yeah, you had said that here earlier about and he looked like he would be the type to be that way, be the open type.
I'll just say Jerry has a great collection of baseball books, and he's very astute, very knowledgeable, but very nice. He went about it very nicely. He just wanted to make sure the record was straight, and that it wasn't a mustache that sent him out of St. Louis. It was money differences.
Yeah, the money situation. All the chapters here are just got, like, you have the chapter the loss of lefties, which we kind of touched on when we talk about Royce and we talk about Carlton. I'll never throw a no hitter is another one of the chapters that was in here. And I think the one that really, of course, intrigued me is the one, a well-paid slave. A well-paid slave is still a slave. And I'm going to take an excerpt out of that starts this whole thing with Mr. Flood. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go past 75. Gibson, I remember when Joe Torre, and you got to correct me now if I'm wrong, was the manager of the Atlanta Braves before his New York Yankees fame. Bob Gibson was Joe Torre's pitching coach.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. I can't remember for how long, but they had a relationship, a good relationship going back several years. In fact, when Joe Torre is one name we hadn't spoken of till now. Joe Torre had his great season in 1971, batted 363, had 230 hits. And what's funny about that is, and Gibson's poking Torre here, he says, he was crushing the ball because there were no infield hits for Joe Torre. He was so slow that,
oh my God, yeah.
Every single one of those 230 hits were legit.
Yeah. The Joe Torre was the Ron Santo. They weren't going to get infield hits.
Right. But they could swing the wood, that's for sure.
Yeah, two Italian guys that were built about the same, but could, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll never forget something about Gibson. It's not part of the book, but it comes up in the book a little bit. In 1971, I will never forget it, Doug. In 1971, opening day, Wrigley Field, the temperature was 43 degrees at game time. Mm-hmm. And I got a chance once to talk with Phil Regan. Mm-hmm. And Phil Regan, who was our bullpen closer in those days, the Vulture, told me, he says, I asked him a question. I go, do you remember 71 when Billy Williams hit a homer in the 11th off of Gibson? Mm-hmm. I go, what do you think the pitch count was then? He goes, you know what? We used to write down the thing, but of course there was nothing about pitch counts in 71. Mm-hmm. He said between Gibson and Fergie, about 140 pitches each.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And I was like, 140 pitches.
I have no doubt, John, and you and I, remember an era when, Gibson and Seaver and Jenkins, all these guys, Don Sutton, these guys would go, throw 280 innings in a year like they're rolling out of bed, and hardly ever, if ever, get hurt. And I'm jumping topics here, but you look at today, look at pitchers today, and the incredible skill that so many young pitchers have today in throwing so hard. But name me a pitcher in the last 5 years who hasn't gotten injured. I mean, it seems like every single pitcher has had one ailment or another.
Right.
And these guys, Gibson, Seaver, Jenkins, all these, Don Drysdale. How would they take care of their arm? Well, they throw long toss, they'd run. It's called a flush run. The day after they pitch, they take a long run. It's called a flush run. They flush the toxins out, and they take an aspirin. And they go back and do it again 3 or 4 days later. And you wonder, with all of our advanced biomechanics and training and the skills that kids have today, why there's so many injuries. And there are explanations for that. The max effort thing. Everything is max effort now, whereas Bob Gibson didn't try to throw 95 every pitch. Whereas today, every team has a guy who throws 100 miles an hour, but very few of them have command or control. So going off on a tangent here, but
No.
But,
It's a good tangent.
But talking about Gibson, Jenkins, those guys. I mean,
Want Marichal? Yes.
if you're in the bullpen, at least before 1970 or before 1965, if you're in the bullpen, that usually meant you weren't very good.
Right.
Simply stated. I mean, there's some, Hoyt Wilhelm. There's some exceptions, Ted Abernathy, but for the most part, your guy was meant to go 9 innings. So.
Exactly. I mean, and the average age of these guys who were in the pen then, I would have to say were like 35, 36 years old. I can remember Elroy Face, Jim Bunning, after a great career, went to the bullpen. Right, yeah. Exactly.
Phil Reagan himself made a long career. I don't know if he was ever a starter, but he made a long career for himself out of the bullpen. A quality one. So.
Without a doubt. Even though he was tailing off a little bit, and until you really get into at his numbers, he was still the guy that I think that a Shane Dees went to, right? I mean, Shane Dees knew he had some gas left in the tank.
Oh, I think so. This was, and I never got to talk to Red Shane Dees, but I think that his approach was, we have when you're managing a Bob Gibson, that's a once in a generation thing, and it'd almost be like Bobby Cox or Leo Mazzoni with Greg Maddox. Those guys can regulate themselves.
Right.
They can tell you when they're done for a day, or for a season, or for their career. Now, granted, such fierce competitors, again, like I pointed out earlier, Gibson, you have to pry the ball from his hands, and there's a lot of pride there for those types of guys. But I think Shane Dees' approach, even into '74, where Gibson's starting to tail off, starting to feel, arm twinges, Red still let him go when he wanted to go.
Gibson, Doug, was never in the bullpen, right?
He did relieve some in his final season, I know, in '75.
Was he the type to come in, like, say, to maybe in the 5th and 6th inning when
right,
a guy...
kind of a long reliever, middle guy, not a closer, and he struggled in '75. He had kind of a poor season his last season, and I think he lamented that as well, going out that way. But used to eat up innings when the Cardinals needed several innings in the middle of a game, right?
I thought about you the other night, and when the Cincinnati Reds came into Chicago, it took 2 out of 3 from the second place Cubs. Now, 2 weeks ago, I was saying the first place Cubs because of this swing that Milwaukee, I don't think is going to lose a game the rest of the year. The way they're playing. But Soroka, the pitcher that was with the White Sox, I think hurt his shoulder after 2 innings against the Reds, and they had to pull him. I just think about that, and I'm like, a guy like Gibson, Fergie, you name him, Seaver, whoever, a guy that we know pitched in pain, Sandy Koufax, right. With that crazy curveball, I can imagine how his arm looks after all these years. You're right. Gibson probably took an aspirin, went home, and that was it.
Well, you might have to say that the mental toughness of those guys may be on another plane at that time. The Gibsons, the Koufaxes, they felt like they had a 9-inning job to do.
Sure.
And in all fairness to young pitchers today, I think they're programmed mentally, if they're starters, to say, "Hey, I only got to go 5 or 6."
Sure.
Maybe
exactly.
7. It's more of a mental programming than even a physical one.
It's so programmed, right? Because there's the guy for the 6th inning, that guy who comes in now in the 8th, and then of course the closer, no matter what. Where before, even if say Gibson had 110 pitches, a manager like a Shane Dees or a Whitey Herzog, he's gonna keep him in if the guy's still humming,
And here in Cincinnati, the beloved Sparky Anderson could credit with some of starting that, because he had guys like Don Gullett and Gary Nolan, who great starting pitchers, but were injury prone at that time. And Sparky really, they call him Captain Hook for a reason. He was one of the first to liberally use that bullpen, starting 5th inning even. So,
without a doubt. I have to tell you, the chapters. How did you? I never asked you in the other books that I've purchased and of course looked at. I just really love the titles of the chapters that we have kind of just touched on. How did you come to? I mean, is it something that when you're writing the book that you say, okay, do you ever take that piece of paper and go, oh, the chapter should be called I'll never pitch a no-hitter or I'm going to pitch a no-hitter? How do you come to this realization of a chapter and its title?
It's funny you say that, John, because thinking of chapter titles is the absolute least favorite thing I do in writing. and I have to, and because of that, I have to wait for that inspiration you're actually alluding to. I go back, if I can't think of one that's catchy, I go back through the chapter and find a catchy moment and try to put that into a few words. Epigraphs help. I love epigraphs. You have a little quote to go along with the something from that chapter. But I'm laughing as you say that because I actually hate thinking of chapter titles. But I thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For some time, this time, I was just like really enwrapped in how you did this. I wonder, for the people that we can still get this book because I got it.
Certainly.
We can still get this book. You can still get it on Amazon and everything else. Was it popular when it came out, Doug? After you finished it?
Oh, I think so. Any trade book that covers a narrow scope of time, and as popular as the Cardinals are around St. Louis and the Midwest, I mean,
sure,
a narrow subject. It did well. Cardinal fans are rabid, just like Cub fans are rabid and Yankee fans are rabid. They'll eat up anything that comes out. So yeah, I had I would say, a very good run when it first came out. And I think what I appreciated people and critics saying about it was that it covered an era of Cardinal baseball that was kind of ignored, and maybe rightfully so. As you pointed out at the outset, John, is very astute that that October 10th, 1968 kind of starts a downfall. And then there's an ebb and flow through the early 70s, late 70s. They had some bad years and then some very strong years until Herzog finally comes along in 1980, and that's a whole nother era, of course. But and that gets me to my purpose of writing it. I wanted people to see. I want a little inside look into Gibson, what he was dealing with in his final years.
Sure.
Not just how maybe his skills were diminishing, as they do for all of us, but the changes that were swirling around the game, around society, really impacting baseball and St. Louis as well.
How long do you think the mound was high in baseball before that change after '68? How high was how long was the mound high in baseball?
I don't know when they made a change before that. I can't think of one, actually. It must go back to near the turn of the century, actually, because I don't think they ever changed it beforehand. And what prompted such a substantive change? A third is quite a bit, going from 15 inches down to 10, and maybe 15 inches was too excessive anyway. But that was a significant one.
I'm going to read two things. I just want to read them because I just love them. And then I'm going to ask you about a book that is going to be coming out next year before I let you go here. But I really do believe, even though I know you, but I don't know you, and I saw this with the Magnuson book, and I saw this in Miracle Collapse, and now I saw it here again. I just love that you get things, and when I see them, you even mentioned a book I have at home, another great author like you, Dave Halberstrom, something about 1964. Mm-hmm. I have that book. But here, this is what I love about you. December 24th, 1969, it's a letter from Curt Flood to Bowie Kuhn on page 37 of this book. Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner at that time, commissioner of baseball, 680 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York. After Mr. Flood writes, after 12 years in the major leagues, I do not feel I'm a piece of property to be bought and sold irrespective of my wishes. I believe that in any system which produces the result violates my basic rights as a citizen and is inconsistent with the laws of the United States and of the sovereign states. It is my desire to play baseball in 1970. I am capable of playing. I have received a contract from the Philadelphia club, but I believe I have the right to consider other offers from other clubs and decisions. I therefore request that you make known to all major league clubs my feelings in this matter and advise them of the availability for the 1970 season. Sincerely, Kurt Flood. I have not heard that since a newscast, and I can tell you how I heard it, from a gentleman named Harry Reisner. So when I saw that in this book, I was like, wow, Doug has really depicted something here and brought back a time that really was the other change. And like you said, a guy like
thank
Gibson.
You, John. It was Mr. Flood who did the powerful writing there, and what a beautiful letter. I mean, effectual or ineffectual as it may have been. I mean, and he probably had a counselor or an agent help him, or maybe he didn't.
Sure.
But just very beautifully stated. I think. I mean, a great narrative there.
I got goosebumps seeing it. Got goosebumps reading it.
I got some hearing you read it.
Yeah. This last thing I want to look is, sometimes I'm always looking for things, but this had to be the ultimate compliment for you because I saw this. Sometimes I don't even look at that. And I want to tell our audience that when you see this book, this really stands out too because this gentleman paid you a compliment. I don't know if he did it to you over a phone, in person, or what, but I know you have a esteem for this gentleman, a high esteem. Every baseball fan should read Gibsons Last Stand. Not only does it give you in-depth knowledge about one of the greatest right-handed pitchers in the history of baseball, but it also gives great insight into the Cardinals' decades of the 60s and 70s. The book is a great read. I enjoyed it very much. The great manager, Whitey Herzog. Well, that alone sells the book 1,000,000 times over.
Well, I don't know about that, John. Thank you, but very meaningful to me, of course, to have someone of Whitey's magnitude. And Whitey, I was blessed while he was alive to be able to talk with Whitey several times, and always available. I mean, he never put anybody off, at least myself, for time, and very gracious always. Grateful for him.
What another great person to meet in your life, right? For sure.
Yeah. And it reminds me a lot of my father. Grew up about 15 miles from my father. Whitey's from the Red Stained East area too. And
yeah,
when I sent a personal note to Whitey once, I just said, "You remind me so much of the goodness of my dad and my dad's home area of Southern Illinois, and I just wanted you to know that." And a lack of pretension. Whitey had an ego, and Cardinals players told me Whitey had an ego, but just a genuine goodness that is from an era gone by.
And again, what a great manager. I could still see him with the one lefty and the one righty, where he would put the one guy in right field and then bring. I'd be like, what's this guy doing?
Todd Worrell. Todd Worrell got to right field.
And the lefty, who was the lefty? Daly.
Ken Daly, yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
I see that like yesterday, Doug.
And who would think of that?
I want to before I let you go, I want to let, just fantastic. What a compliment to you.
Thank you.
Deservedly so.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to let the cat out of the bag because we're going to do another one. You're going to get tired of me, but I hope you don't get tired of me. Never. Let's go on with a book that's coming out in 2026 about a right-hander named of the New York Mets, Roger McDowell. What can you tell? A little sneak preview about that one. Is that one going to be?
Happy to. May Cub fans and Cardinals fans forgive me for doing a Mets book, but I'll give you the abridged version, John. Your listeners, the abridged version. When I was doing my most recent book on the '87 Cardinals, I thought it'd be great to get the Mets' perspective on that season since they had the great rivalry. And
sure,
Jay Horwitz, the great PR director of the Mets for decades, got a hold of him. He got me in touch with Howard Johnson and some other Ray Knight, some other guys from that late '80s Mets team, and Roger McDowell as well. And Roger and I hit it off. We talked for hours on end. And after we hung up the last time, and I got this Cardinals book done, I was thinking, well, gosh, his reputation as a prankster, and his ability to tell stories, and that colorful, I'll use the term colorful, '86 Mets team. I thought,
Sure.
well, Roger would be a great topic for a biography or an autobiography you'd like me to ghostwrite it. So he was amenable to it, and some guys are very private. They don't want. I'll say this: there was a member of the '69 Cubs whom I was talking to. I suggested an autobiography, and the person was so kind that he didn't want to put out something as boastful as an autobiography. Some guys are like that, but
Yes.
Roger was up to the idea, and has lots of stories to tell, and he is well known for his pranks. But an interesting fact I found on Roger: between 1985 and 1996, only Lee Smith appeared in more games than Roger McDowell. Roger was in 723 games in that 12-season stretch, and only Lee Smith pitched in more. So
And
he answered
that
the
is
bell.
amazing. That is amazing.
He was all business on the jokester outside the lines, but between the lines, he was all business. And that's I spoke with Dwight Gooden, I spoke with Ray Knight, Howard Johnson, Kevin Mitchell. All these guys from the '86 Mets said the same thing, that Roger, despite his reputation with the public,
Sure.
he was a bulldog. He was all business. So it's Roger's autobiography. It's told in his words, and he's got some great stories from those Mets teams to share.
It's are you basically almost finished with it, or is it?
Yes, it's off to press, and should be in production shortly.
Okay, great. I'll be. We've already kind of talked about it, but I'll be calling you for that one because that's going to be a great book.
It was a lot of fun to put together. Yeah.
Remember him very well, especially he was on the '86 Mets championship team. Yes, he was.
Won Game 7 of the World Series.
Sure.
Winner. But no,
Yeah.
just a great guy and great storyteller, and I think baseball fans will enjoy it.
For sure. We have visited today with the great author Doug Feldmann, and that will put you at what, your 15th book with the McDowell book?
I believe so. I believe that's correct.
I mean, I'm starting to get my own Doug Feldmann library in Chicago, Illinois.
Glad there's somebody. So.
Yeah, no, you've done a great job, and we visited with Doug. Just fantastic. Keep up the great work you're doing in Cincinnati. I know.
Likewise, John.
This is just fantastic. I truly always appreciate you coming on a conversation with John Conenna. I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Well, John, I want to say also I'm grateful, not for all you do in your podcast, but also you've been a pillar in the hockey community there in Chicago for so long. I'm grateful that you keep that sport strong, in the Chicago area, because I grew up playing hockey in the suburbs, and it went from a fledgling operation in the '80s to, because of people like you, flourished in all parts of the city and the suburbs. So thank you for all you do for not just your show, but for hockey.
Thank you, Doug. You've been really good to me, great to me, and I always love doing these interviews with you. And definitely, when that McDowell book comes out, I'll be creeping the Amazon and calling you next.
It's lots of shady stories in there, but fun ones.
We're gonna have a good one. All right, this will come out on YouTube and Spotify probably by Monday, and we'll get this out. And thank you for going back and looking at another great book that is still for purchase, Gibsons Last Stand, the rise and fall and near misses of the St. Louis Cardinals, 1969 to 75, and of course the author here today, Doug Feldmann.
Thank you, John, so much.
Thank you. Take care. We'll talk soon, Doug.
All right, very good.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.